same age as me, so I don't agree with that statement, right? Curly Prescott has held various professional and management positions for both public and private sector organizations in the telecom sector in Trinidad and Tobago. Over the past several years in various disciplines, including engineering, regulatory affairs, sales, carrier services, business development, and general management. I agree with that statement because since Curly was a student here, he was in the year ahead of me. Curly was like Superman. Curly topping everything. I top in the year afterwards for everything, but Curly was topping, and that was the guy I was trying to keep up with all the time. Curly has always been exceptional in terms of his commitment and his performance within the industry, and I hope that he'll be able to benefit a lot from the wealth of experience he brings over the last few years in the telecom sector. Right, so he also served as the postgraduate course director at UE. That was for the MRP program, right? The Masters in Regulation and Policy, where he looked at issues revolving around the non-technical side of things that you need to have accomplished in order to have a telecom service delivered, right? So as I said in the beginning of class, it's not only about the technology, you need to understand the things outside of that and how the technologies are used, right? He was recently General Manager for Columbus Communications Grenada Operations. You were also at TST for a while too.
I was at TST.
Right, yeah. And Ministry of Public Admin.
Yes, before
all right. Yeah. I wasn't stalking you, right? But yeah, right? Yeah, so he's been around, right? He's been doing the VP Network and ICT Services for Columbus Communications across the Southern Caribbean, Trinidad, Grenada, and Curacao. His responsibilities include the telecoms and network infrastructure and information technology, network operations, application support and development, building systems administration, and enterprise solution implementation functions of the company, right? That's a lot, boy, Curly. And he has no gray hairs as yet.
I have a few.
Just man number 55?
I didn't start just for me.
Well, right, so I just want to introduce Curly to you guys, and I hope that you enjoy his presentation.
Alright, good morning all. Thanks a lot for that introduction, Sean. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here. As Sean indicated, I am a former UE student, as they will say, a UE alumnus. So it's really my pleasure to participate in, I guess, sharing with you all some context as to what's going on in the telecom sector. Dr. Malio asked me to take a local, a regional, and a global perspective of it, as well as to share with you all some insight into what Columbus Communications is doing in terms of its presence and its plans throughout the region. And then also to shed some light on, I guess, career opportunities, key skills that will be useful in the telecommunications sector as it stands today and as it evolves in the future. Feel free to ask any questions. So if you all see anything you all want me to elaborate on during the presentation, no need to save your questions till the end. Feel free to interject and we can spend a little bit more time on any particular area you may want to look at. And feel free to ask any type of question. It doesn't have to be only technical, or make it as technical as you would like. And I'll try my best to give you an answer that satisfies your request. Alright, so let's quick review of the agenda for today. As I said, looking at global and regional trends in the telecom sector, as well as from the trends where things are heading towards. Then give you a look at what Columbus Communications, also known as FLO, is doing from its network and service development perspective, as well as touch on some career opportunities in the telecom sector, and accompanying that, key skills needed to leverage those opportunities. So just general global trends in telecom sector. The biggest form of growth are happening in two major industry sectors, primarily mobile and broadband. So traditionally, telecom made its major impact in the 80s and 90s via voice telephony, mainly fixed telephony service, wire telephony. And back in the 90s and early 2000s, basically countries and the development of their telecom sectors were measured by the fixed line penetration of landline telephone service in their respective countries, right? While it's still measured and while it's still looked at, it is growing increasingly less relevant. You know, what is really sort of tracked and measured and given more significance is the take-up of mobile services and the take-up of broadband services. From a penetration perspective, mobile is still well ahead of broadband, but mobile is at the point where it's trying to saturate, trying to level off, while broadband is still on a pretty steep growth curve, and there's still a lot more opportunity for growth. So as you see in that, as you see on the slide, the current penetration of broadband in the world is expected to reach 40%, just below 40% by the end of 2030. And that kind of speaks to the opportunity, you know, how much more customers and users that broadband still has to touch. So it basically, when telecom operators and business persons look at opportunity, you know, the next wave of opportunity is broadband development. How to get broadband to more consumers, how to get more consumers to adopt broadband. Things that would impact take-up of broadband, the spread, the pervasiveness of broadband would be one, the price, right? So if broadband is not affordable, obviously it's not going to increase its take-up. Persons are not going to generally subscribe to it. So one of the challenges that operators and general industry faces is how to reduce the price. And in order to reduce the price, obviously you have to reduce the cost of delivering broadband. So again, there are a number of efforts focused on how do we deliver broadband to a wider span of the population at a cheaper cost. All right. The other major area, getting back to, as I said, the mobile sector. So while from a mobile penetrative perspective, a large percentage of users do have access to mobile technology. I mean, generally across the world, even in the least developed countries in Africa and so on, the availability of mobile service is almost universal right now. And it's not very difficult for someone to get access to a cheap handset and actually have access to mobile service. So while the actual availability and the penetration of it is pretty almost universal, the next step in mobile is how do we deliver more on that mobile network? And you know, globally, especially in the more developed countries, the big focus is on fourth generation mobile technologies. And even in the developing and least developed countries, where the focus is rather than following the evolution path that the developed countries followed from going from first generation to second generation to third generation to fourth generation, a lot of these countries are looking at how can they just leapfrog from second generation to fourth generation right away. Everyone familiar with what a fourth generation mobile technology is? Silence is a yes, a no.
I'm not 100% sure about fourth generation, but I just want to answer a question, right?
Yes.
Each generation basically means that you can do more with the bandwidth, right? Or they provide an increased amount of bandwidth, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I'm guessing with the fourth generation is probably the maximum bandwidth available to subscribers for whatever services they want to put on that.
Agreed. Very, 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 very fair. And what has come about as you are able to deliver more to consumers given a certain amount of spectrum is that services as well evolve, right? So essentially, when we talk about first generation mobile technologies, and I guess you all will look at that later on in your courses this year. A first generation mobile telephone network or service was generally voice only, all right? It was just you could make phone calls and receive phone calls. Things that we don't even use today. Well, we still use, but we don't. It's not as sexy as it used to be. It's like SMS, short message service, right? That wasn't even available with first generation mobile. And you know, data-driven services, the ability to download apps and all that was basically non-existent for a first generation mobile service. First generation was all about voice only, and technology that was used for a first generation mobile service was basically analog technology. So they weren't even digitizing analog voice signals into digital format, into bits and so on, and processing that and compressing it and all that good stuff that current mobile networks do today. It was just basically taking analog voice, modulating it on a carrier, and transmitting it between cell sites and so on. The second generation is when you start to get the first wave of digitalization one, so they were actually taking the voice traffic or voice signals and digitizing it and transmitting it in a digital form. And with that digitization of the voice traffic or the voice signals, you were now able to layer on additional services. So that's when you started to have the emergence of technologies such as short message service. With third generation, as my friend at the back there said, there was now a look towards providing more bandwidth. And with bandwidth now, you are now able to do additional services such as multimedia message service. So no longer were you only looking at transmitting text, you're now looking at text, transmitting images, pictures, files, right? And the fourth generation is now, because of the increase in bandwidth via the mobile platform, you're now able to do things like video talk or video call, live streaming, you know. Back when GSMs first came out in Trinidad, the thought of using your phone to do a live video stream wasn't something that anyone even envisaged. And now the typical norm is for guys, if you have a fourth generation mobile service, is you do a YouTube stream, right? So that is with additional bandwidth and additional technologies and signal processing and all that good stuff, which is stuff you would study. You're now able to leverage and roll out more services. So as I said, the emphasis, the global trend, especially in more developed and even in some of the less developing countries, is how we can leapfrog, how we can go from second generation to fourth generation technologies as quickly as possible. And the most recent, well, I can't say most recent, but the other major trend happening in the global telecommunications environment markets today is the emergence of cloud-based services. And what a cloud-based service relates to is no longer having to, if a customer wants a service, no longer having to install it on your computer at home, or and download programs, install it, maintain it, upgrade it at your computer at home. The new trend is where the services that you utilize today is actually hosted in the internet, hosted in dedicated servers, not necessarily on your computer, but you just use the internet and use the capacity you have to access those services. And those are things like, well, I wouldn't go into it too much, but effectively that's the growing emergence. And from a residential perspective and from a business perspective, it's having a huge impact on the rollout of services in terms of how services are rolled out, what the cost it is to the end users, it is to support these services on all these various next generation wave of ICT-based services that consumers enjoy and benefit from today. Before I move on to the regional trends, any questions on just general global trends and what's happening in telecom sector today? Alright, so moving into sort of regional trends. First bullet really talks to operators using their existing networks to deliver multiple services, right? So triple play sort of refers to operators using their networks to provide three major form of services, and the three major form of services refer to generally voice services, video services, and data services. So a triple play operator or triple play service provider is one that typically offers three major telecom services. And really what we're seeing again, the growing trend throughout the region is operators, especially major telecom operators in the region today, expanding, upgrading, enhancing their networks in order to provide this wave of three services. And some operators are even going towards, as they call the quad play, which is four services, and fourth service being typically referred to mobile services. So a case in point, and we have it here in Trinidad today, a typical triple play operator would be like Fluke Columbus Communications. We do, well, as we used to coin watch, talk, click, video, telephone service, and broadband service. And a typical quad play operator, as we have here in Trinidad, is actually the joint brand of Blink and B-Mobile, where they actually do fixed line telephony, they do mobile service under B-Mobile, they do Blink broadband, and they even have Blink entertainment available in limited areas, right? So they actually, TSTT does provide cable TV in certain areas depending on the quality of the network infrastructure. So that's basically is the operators now looking at the investments in their networks and upgrading it, making changes to it, but ensuring that they can now maximize that investment they've made in their networks to deliver more services and compete with other operators that they used to compete before. Traditionally, as I said before, TSTT never really played in the cable TV space. Now they're able to do that. Yeah. And then we have other operators, so not just Flow, not just TSTT, we have other operators also delving into our spaces by using their networks, either existing as is or with some upgrades, and offering additional services, broadband, mobile, voice, voice and that sort of stuff. So sort of heading towards leveraging the existing network investment to provide a suite of triple play or quad play services. In the region, and what's very common in Caribbean right now, although it's marketed as 4G, right? It strictly speaking is third generation technology. So what we have is an emergence, definitely, especially in major countries like Jamaica, Trinidad, and some of the other smaller Caribbean islands, where the mobile networks have upgraded their networks to support third generation technology. So going on the global trend side, we see the operators in the US and so on, like ECNG and Verizon, they're supporting fourth generation mobile technology, such as commonly referred to as long-term evolution, LTE. The operators here in the region, maybe not quite there yet, but we are deploying close to fourth generation, known as the protocol or the technology used in Trinidad today is high-speed downlink packet access, HSDPA, mobile technologies. So that's what the mobile networks have deployed, because this is what they have established they need to remain competitive and to stay ahead of the game. So that's where a lot of the regional operators are hedging their investments right now, especially on their mobile networks. We also see a greater adoption of fiber within the networks of the various operators. So again, for TSTT, in order for TSTT to do quad play, in order for TSTT to do blink entertainment, television, faster broadband into customers' homes, they've had to increase their investment in fiber in their network, right? In order for Columbus to stay ahead of TSTT to deliver high definition channels and faster broadband, we've had to increase or maintain our investment in fiber, as well as in new markets and in new deployments we're rolling out. We're even deepened our investment in fiber, meaning that we're even deploying fiber closer to customers' homes, as we'll see later in the presentation. So there's definitely again, something you all may cover in the year ahead. There's generally various modes in which fiber technology is used in access networks. They talk about fiber to the curb and fiber to the home and all these sort of deployment strategies. What we're seeing is fiber is being deployed closer and closer to the customer, to the point where we're actually starting to see fiber to the home, where fibers actually run straight into customers' homes and usually deliver the services that are provided in order to ensure that customers' demands and expectations are met. And from a less technical standpoint, although there's a very big technical implication, what we're seeing right now from a government perspective, or government and regulatory perspective, a lot of the regulators have said, okay, fine, since maybe 2002, the first thing was, let's get competition in the telecom space in these countries, in the Caribbean countries. So I'm sure most of you all were alive back then, in the 90s. TSTT really used to run the route into the telecom service. You had no choice from a mobile network perspective. It was actually very expensive to get mobile service. And only very few persons had access to mobile technology. And that's when they were doing the first generation analog mobile technology I'm talking about, analog ARMS they used to call it. And again, TSTT was the only guy that did landline service. There were a few small players who used to do dial-up internet, but they were really very small, and TSTT used their control over the local telephone network to really stifle how much they could have grown, while TSTT expanded its own dial-up internet service. So really and truly, TSTT held a monopoly in some areas and a virtual monopoly in others around the provision of telecommunication services within Trinidad. And during the first decade of the 21st century, from 2000 to 2009, all of the governments effectively across the region adopted a change in their stance in their regulatory frameworks and their regulatory environments and invited competition. So they invited the Digicels, they invited the Columbus Communications to enter into these countries, roll out parallel networks, so no longer the other service providers have to be reliant on TSTT or cable and wireless, depending which country you are in, to deliver service. They had independent telecom operators deploying services. So that was like the first step, and that sort of happened in the first decade of the 21st century. So I think Digicel would have actually entered the market here in Trinidad in 2006. Yeah. So they started to provide competitive mobile service in Trinidad in 2006. And Columbus, the year after, they started to provide competitive broadband service, high-speed internet service over their cable network. And then around 2009, TSTT started to offer cable TV in limited areas, depending on the suitability of their plans. So that was already the first step, get competition in from a government regulatory perspective. Now the governments are saying, okay, what next? What's the next step of effective or ensuring effective competition? Ensuring customers have an easy choice as to say which telecom provider I want to choose. So the next step that's coming in that governments are really pushing the operators hard on right now is supporting number portability. And that basically means when you want to switch your service provider, your voice service provider, whether you're fixed line or mobile, you no longer have to lose your number. You no longer have to send out emails to persons saying, hey, you've changed your number. You no longer have to walk in two phones or have two phone lines in your home for a period of 3 months when you notify people, hey, but start calling me back on this number because I'm changing it, etc., etc. The intent is you can choose whichever provider you want to go with, keep your number with you as you go, whether you're a residential person or a business person, and therefore you are now able to effectively benefit from the best packages out there in the market. And it's not, well, obviously it exists in the more developed countries like the US, the Canadas, UKs, and so on. But in terms of the Caribbean, it's actually not a reality in 3 countries, well, the Caribbean, Latin American region. In the Caribbean, it's actually a reality in the Cayman Islands and the Dominican Republic. And on the Central America side, it's a reality in Panama now. Panama, it happened around 2010, Cayman Islands 2012, so just over a year now, and Dominican Republic 2011. So that's sort of like the second decade of this century now. This is where the new thrust is. Bahamas, they've actually well advanced, and they're hoping to effect number portability, make it a reality before the end of this year. And from Trinidad and Jamaica's perspective, the hope is for it to happen sometime next year, but if not next year, by latest 2015. Any questions on that?
Yeah, clearly. Paul.
You go ahead. Yeah. You get preference for it.
Yeah,
well, in the countries that it's been implemented in, has there been any record of an increased rate of change of providers by subscribers or anything like that?
Okay. That's an excellent question. So at this time, because it's still fairly new, the regulators in those respective countries have not really published definitive stats to say, but this has been the impact of number portability. And this is actually one of the things that they're actually supposed to be a workshop in Trinidad before the end of this year, inviting regulators from these countries to come and present what has happened today. But today there's nothing published as yet in terms of the impact of it, in terms of volumes or percent of customers that have ported and so on. What there has definitely been an impact on is in terms of prices. So that has already been seen, where operators have sort of had large market share, right? Before, when you didn't have the port, and they had large market share, they could have kind of told you, they want to change, well, good luck with that, right? Now they've had to definitely, so there has definitely been empirical evidence around 15 to 20% drop in prices, especially around operators with larger market shares. So even if you don't port, you still benefited from the better pricing and packages that was available from number portability. The challenges, though, that it's expensive. It's by no means cheap. It involves changes in operators' networks and how they switch calls. It involves changes in the billing systems, how they rate calls. And it involves having a system, a sort of middleman system in place between the operators to sort of almost be like a mediator between the various operators to facilitate it. And all this costs. So there's a whole question around how is it financed, how do we recover these costs, etc. Because while you're spending money to implement this, you also have to drop your price to keep your customers. So there's that little dichotomy that we operators sitting in our, with our hats on, say, hey, operators, you don't really need this number portability thing because it's expensive. Well, I don't say that because we want it, right? We want ECNG's customers. So we like it not that expensive, right? It's a small thing, so we push it, but a lot of the other operators, they tend to sit back and say, this is really costly, we do not cost benefit analysis. But that argument is sort of dying away because when you have smaller countries like Cayman Islands, the population in the Cayman Islands is not even 100,000 people, and they're able to effect number portability. Then when a country like Trinidad with 1.4 million people, 1.8 million mobile subs, all this good stuff, there really is very little justification as to why it can't be done. So that's sort of like a work in progress as we speak. Sean?
Yeah, just one comment first in terms of talking about number portability. It would be interesting to see how the number of the subs changes as well as number portability. How many people no longer need to have 10 phones?
Right. Yes. So the actual number of subs drops. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how that works. But the question I wanted to ask was, unofficially, I noted that the Telecom Authority put out a notice for comments in terms of the role, for instance, of a non-conventional person entering the market for delivering telecom services. That's a particular electricity provider, TNTech. I guess they're trying to leverage the dark fiber installations they have. I'm interested in noting what sort of concerns you may have.
Concerns? You can't have concerns. Listen, the reality is, when we see TNTech applying for a concession, we look for the opportunities as well. And I'll give you an example. A lot of Columbus's and TSTT's cables are on TNTech poles. TNTech actually owns the majority of poles in Trinidad. So we actually have to pay them to use their poles. And right now, because they're TNTech and they're not really governed by the Telecom Authority, they're actually governed by a separate regulatory agency called the Regulated Industries Commission. The negotiation is a very difficult negotiation. To want to be better, TNTech says, okay, you paid $10 a pole, now I want to charge you $30. And we say, well, what's your basis to do that? We have no basis. Right? And then they could just, and then it stamps on, it goes on long, and so on. And so we actually see an opportunity where if they actually do have a concession, right now, when Digital and TSTT have a fight, there's actually a mediator, which is the Telecom Authority, right? And the Telecom Authority looks at evidence and so on and makes a ruling. And generally, they rule in favor of consumers, which means lower costs and lower prices. So we see that opportunity if Telecom Authority has some sort of regulatory oversight over TNTech, then that will help us address a lot of issues. And not just pole sharing price, electricity outages. We have a number of cases where we have equipment out in the field that either due to constant electricity outages, we now have to install better batteries and all that sort of stuff to keep our service up and running when TNTech's power goes. And when TNTech restores it, or when TNTech has a transformer blows up and it damages our equipment, our ability to get compensation is very limited. You ask for it, you send them an invoice, and they just laugh at you, right? So, with Telecom authorities having some intervention into their operations, we hope to see better quality of service from TNTech, better response times, better accountability, and as I said, even rebates when due to an outage on their part. Due to an outage on their part, we have service loss to our customers. So now when our customers screaming at us asking for rebates, we could at least get a portion of that back from the real source of the issue, right? In terms of TNTech getting into the business, I mean, from a Columbus perspective, we are very confident that our network is pretty strong. And I'm not too sure if TNTech has the capital ability to build a network that could really compete with ours. There may be some spaces there they might be able to compete with us on, but in those spaces I think they kind of compete with us on already, which is like doing dark fiber to bigger agencies and companies. So they're already in that space already, and we compete with them based upon the level of service we're able to support. We are able to provide better support to our customers who require those dark fibers. We're able to provide better 24/7 coverage, on-call response times, faster resolution. So this is just sort of means that we just have to, dot our I's, cross our T's, enhance our level of service, up our game. But we don't really see TNTech as a threat. TNTech, state-run, inefficient. This is like, you know, a little brother to TSTT trying to say they want to kind of compete against TSTT and us. And if we think we will easily compete with TSTT, then we think we don't really see TNTech as a major threat to us. But it does change the dynamic of the sector. And as that actually, from a personal perspective, not a Columbus communications perspective, I think it's something I welcome. Yeah. Because if it means that, because there are areas that need to be frank that TNTech are in and beyond, right? TNTech are not right across the country. So if it means that those consumers in those areas can now get access to a decent broadband service, then more power to the people, right? So that's that. But again, and sort of TNTech's intervention kind of speaks to, I guess, my first bullet about people leveraging their existing investment. This is when TNTech now, who does no telecom services, now want to leverage their existing investment to do 2 or 3 services. And where, of course, they would leverage their existing infrastructure where they have fiber connecting on them of their substations and so on. They would now leverage that to now roll out services to the general public, we assume, if they get their acts in order. And one last point on that, Sean. This is not the first time TNTech has talked about it. So the question is, do they really have the capacity within them to sort of offer a widespread service to the public that is quality and so on. Future of telecom. So effectively, what we look at when we talk about the next wave of mobile technology and increasing broadband penetration and adoption, the end game of all that is broadband everywhere, right? High speed internet available everywhere. And generally, if you're a consumer of at least one telecom service provider, no matter where you go, you'll be able to access a decent quality, high-speed internet connection. And this sort of ties into my point about cloud services and at the bottom as well, because what it's speaking to is, whereas before, you would have to have a sophisticated device and install a number of technologies and so on in order to use the services or use applications and so on. With the cloud and broadband everywhere, then you're able to do a number of things at a moment's notice. You think, hey, shucks, I would like to build this document or get a report of something, and you're able to just go into the cloud where your data is stored in the cloud in the global internet, backed up on everything, able to access that data and make decisions or take affirmative action because you have an affordable broadband connection everywhere you go. So that's basically where telecom is heading to, and that could be a combination of wireless technologies, fiber technologies, a hybrid fiber wireless type deployment, but basically the end game is to ensure that high-speed internet, in one form or the other, via one network or another, is available in a ubiquitous manner. And then the other side of what we're seeing is that the actual services that we use today are now migrating to what means where it's deployed or carried or supported using internet protocol, right? So every one of you all here that have internet, generally you all should be familiar with IP and IP addresses and all that sort of good stuff, internet protocol. All of the traditional services that we use today. So when Columbus first did television, there was almost literally no use of IP to deliver cable TV, right? Now we use a lot of IP in our deliverance of cable TV. We transport a lot of our signals from abroad into our market here via an IP network. We modulate it and transmit it and distribute it via IP streams. So we use a lot of internet protocol technologies in order to deliver voice, video, and data. All right. So what's happening now with broadband everywhere and services delivered over internet protocol, we're now able to access those services everywhere. Right. It's not a case where when you go abroad, you have to, things like roaming and having to push in a new SIM card and all that sort of stuff is going to disappear. Because once you have a reliable internet connection, you're able to access your services as if you're home. Right? And that sort of now speaks to my last bullet about location independent, regardless of where you are. Because there's broadband everywhere and everything is delivered over IP, you're now able to, you're no longer tied to watching your Max Pack, your Barclays Premier League game at home, because that's where you have your Max Pack subscription. You know, you're on the beach with your friends in Maracas and you're like, oh shucks, man, you play in Chelsea today. You pull up your tablet, and because you subscribe to MaxBack, you're watching that football game at your convenience, at your leisure. Alright? And of course, with that location independence and everything over IP, now it's moving towards device independence. And my device independence is important as well. Is that no longer are you tied to have to use a telephone in order to make your voice calls, or need a TV in order to watch your video subscription, or need a computer to browse the internet. And that's the thing right now, depending on if you have a decent data package. You don't even need a computer to use the internet anymore. You're using tablets, using smartphones and all that. So what you're looking at is effectively and ultimately, agnostic devices, just technology devices that can be used to watch TV, make phone calls, browse the internet, type documents, save data, recover data, and all that good stuff. Questions on that? How am I making up for time? I have 10 more minutes more to go. Ooh, so I need to speed up. Alright, so let me just go quickly. Columbus's networks. So effectively, this is kind of speaking to our plans, what we plan to do as we move ahead. So currently we have fairly good coverage throughout most of Trinidad. We span from Chagaramas to Sangre Grande to Mayaro to Point Fortin effectively. Well, almost to Point Fortin, yeah. But we actually kind of in Siparia, Yeah. Not like living real fun Siparia. Because we have some coverage in Siparia, But we expanded.
I saw all the ones putting on legs and
Fair enough. Yes, so the plan of course is to continue to expand. Quite good about Siparia, but I actually believe we cover the last stats I saw about 3,000 homes in Siparia, to be honest. But maybe I don't know what edge of Siparia you live in, but continue.
Just getting closer.
Yeah, Siparia is the Prime Minister, man. Yeah, soon. So the plan is to continue to expand. So right now, Point 14, where we have cable, we still have our old service, our old analog video only service. So the plan is to digitize and get broadband, digital video, and all that good stuff. We right now have no coverage at all in Toko and all Manzanilla, so the plan is to expand into those areas. Right now, Columbus is not in Tobago at all. So the plan is to get into Tobago between 2014 and 2015. We actually have already laid a fiber optic cable between Trinidad and Tobago to allow us to do this. So now it's just a case about building on the network in Tobago and connecting that network via that subsea fiber back to our plant in Togo and Sangre Grande and so on. So that's an ongoing project we have right now. I put it using FTTH, that's fiber to the home. So currently in Trinidad with Columbus's services, we use a lot of fiber in our network, but that fiber actually stops at equipment on poles throughout the country, and we have that equipment we normally call nodes. That's what we call them. We call them nodes. So what we do is we do fiber to the node deployments, access deployments. Each node generally serves a maximum of, and I stress maximum of, 100 homes. And that 100 homes doesn't mean that 100 customers, this is just 100 homes who may be customers. So out of every node, that would service a coverage footprint of 100 homes. And out of those 100 homes, only maybe 60 to 70 would be actual customers, right? So that's basically what we do. So we do fiber to that node, which promises to serve up to 100 homes. Many times a lot less than 100 homes per node. Many times, depending on the part of the country you're in, it might be 40 homes, 50 homes, 60 homes a node. Because part of that design that we do when we're deploying a node is that each node is not just the number of homes that we look at. We also look at the distance of our plant from that node to the home. So the distance of homes from that node impacts how many homes we can really serve, right? So if it is that we have a lot of homes jam-packed close together, then the cap, then what determines how many homes we serve will be the number. We'll say, okay, we cut off at 100. But if that the houses are a lot spread apart, then it's not so much the number of homes that impacts how many homes we serve, but it's the distance from the node to the home, right? And that's actually a lot of the times why you might see customers say, my neighbor have cable, why I don't have cable? it really now comes down to the distance from that nearest node. And for us to serve you as that customer on the edge of our footprint, and we actually have to deploy a new node, right? With fiber to that node, and then run cable to serve those consumers who will be served by that node. And what material do we use from the node to the homes? We use coaxial cable, right? So our access network is basically a hybrid fiber coaxial network, HFC network, right? That's what we use in Trinidad. However, when we go into Tobago, our plan is actually to use fiber to the home. So we will no longer do a hybrid of fiber to coax, we just actually do fiber straight into customers' homes. If you ask why you're not using Trinidad, well, the reality is we started the build in Trinidad back in 2005-06, when at the time HFC made more sense. And with technology and advancement, now fiber to the home now makes more sense. And to go and rebuild all that stuff that you just did for the last 7-8 years, I mean, you have to get business approval for that. But Tobago, which is greenfield, which is new, definitely that's where we will take the opportunity to roll out fiber to the home technology there. And the other thing about Tobago, what informs us using fiber to the home is, as again, the density is a lot less in Tobago. So if we did a node deployment, because the homes are so spread out, we'd actually be down to like 30 and 20 homes a node, which is really cost effective for us to roll out a node and everything and just only serve 20 to 30 homes. So that sort of informs and pushes us towards using a fiber to the home access deployment in that country when we get there. And of course, Columbus is big on deploying into new markets in the Caribbean and Latin America. So this year, we acquired cable companies in St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and Antigua. So now the Flow brand is now available actually in 8 countries in the Caribbean, namely Jamaica, Trinidad, Curacao, Grenada, Barbados, and those 3. And of course, we plan to enter new markets. And as I just spoke about just now, you know, the intention, of course, is to do more fiber to the home deployments in those greenfield countries. So those countries where we don't have any network today, and we're building a network from scratch. The intention is to use fiber to the home deployments. So currently in Barbados right now, where we've actually entered Barbados, was it late this year or late last year? I want to say late last year. That's a greenfield deployment. So we currently have roughly 5,000 customers already, all delivered service using fiber to the home. And we're building out our network there. In terms of the actual technology we use to deploy fiber to the home, we use the gigabit passive optical network technology, GPON, is what we refer to it in the industry. And effectively, why we use GPON? The P in GPON stands for passive, and what that means is that once we leave our network facilities, our network hubs, our network operation points throughout the country, we do not require power from the utility company until we get to the customer's homes. So it's fully passive. There's no powered equipment from our hub to the customer's home. So there's power at our hub, there's power at the customer's home. But in between, nothing else requires power. How we deploy services to customers in those countries, we use splitters. So on the fiber, we actually use splitters to, all of your physics students, do diffraction of wavelengths. And that's what we use to actually deliver bandwidth to each of the customers' homes. Yeah. And effectively, what the benefits of GPON is that you use a lot less fiber. You actually use 2 fibers and splitters to serve up to 64 to 128 customers. As well as, of course, now that you're using fiber to customers' homes, you can deploy a lot better speeds. Because it's passive, you're not affected by utility company outages. So if TNTech has an outage, your plant is not affected because it's not powered by anything done by TNTech. And most importantly, because you're using fiber and not coaxial cable, you're a lot less susceptible to noise issues that we currently experience today. So the quality of experience of our service to our customers are a lot better. This is just a quick snapshot of our regional network that Columbus has today. We've recently done a joint venture with Cable and Wireless, where we can use their network to serve our customers and vice versa. So that has increased our span, our reach in the region to almost 50 countries throughout the region, and we can now deploy services to multinational enterprise customers and deliver bandwidth and give us access to deploy services in those countries. Just ignore this so I can move ahead. from a service perspective, as it stands right now, 94% of our video subscribers are digital. So we only have a remaining 6% of customers, primarily in the Sangre Grande, Point 14, Faizabad, Library area. We have to convert to digital. So that's our sort of our remaining outstanding project items in terms of our digital conversion project that plan to complete between 2014 and 2015. So during 2015, we aim to basically shut down our traditional legacy analog video services, and all of our customers in Trinidad essentially should be digital. The other thing that we're working on is increasing the household broadband penetration in Trinidad and Tobago. So as going back up to my, I guess my second slide, I talked about the worldwide global penetration of broadband in the world is, anyone can remember? 39%, very good, right? So Trinidad, as you can see, we actually ahead of the global average. So while the global average is 39%, Trinidad is actually at 55% right now. And our aim from a socio-economic development perspective is to support Trinidad, so this is our Columbus objective, this is a national objective, achieving 75% of households having access or having subscribed to a broadband connection. Currently there are roughly 400,000 homes in Trinidad and Tobago, so basically we aim to try and get to surpass 300,000 internet subscribers active in Trinidad and Tobago. And our target for this is actually end of 2015. So by in a little over 2 years, we're hoping Trinidad will be to the point where we have achieved 75% household broadband penetration. And obviously our hope is to have more than half of those customers. And as I put there, we keep on planning to push the gas to the throttle. Alright, so we'll look out for better service and faster speeds from the very near future. In addition to those traditional services, broadband and video, obviously we're looking at the next wave, and this kind of comes back to what I talked about in terms of cloud-based services, right? So basically we've now developed, Flow has now developed an app which allows customers on a mobile device, such as a tablet or smartphone, or on a laptop, to access their talk service and soon their video service, right? You can actually watch ESPN via this app. So the intention is to add more channels to that platform. And for our business customers, what we've seen a lot of demand is that customers traditionally who used to have to buy private PBXs, as they call them, private branch exchanges, which allow them to make extension calls within their offices and support the auto attendants, the interactive voice response systems, welcome to RBC, those sort of things. Customers are saying they no longer have the time, or as a business, you don't want to be worried about IT, you want to be worried about your business. If you're a bank, you want to be worried about loans, you don't want to be worried about your private branch exchange, right? So what companies are increasingly prone to doing is outsourcing that, buying that, subscribing to that service from an established service provider, right? And that's sort of like the benefit of the cloud. Rather than you having to buy, install, maintain, support, troubleshoot something like a private branch exchange or PBX. Now you can say, hey, you're a telecom provider, you operate the PBX. I'll just, make sure people can answer phones and so on. And when they say they can't answer the phone, I'll just call you and you fix it, right? So that's effectively what's going on. So Columbus has now deployed what we call our Cloud Voice platform, which is a cloud-based virtual private branch exchange, where we effectively host the customer's PBX, right? It's actually deployed in Miami, funny enough. So the platform is based in Florida, and we have IP phones that are sitting in a number of customers' locations, and those IP phones register to the platform in Florida. And they can customize the auto attendant, add new users, exchange new users. So that's also a wave of service that we deploy today. I talked about IPTV. What IPTV speaks to is again coming back to watching your video service where you want, when you want. So that sort of will support the Flow2Go app, as well as other variants of services that you will see. And another sort of version of rolling out of IPTV, or Internet Protocol Television, I should have said, is sort of the cloud video recorder. And what the cloud video recorder is we actually have it available here in Trinidad, the digital video recorder, where customers can, their cable box, you can use it to save programs and to rewind TV and to fast forward past ads and all that sort of good stuff, right? but it requires the subscriber to pay more for an advanced box. That's how it's deployed today. And if you're not home and you remember, oh shucks boy, SVU going on tonight, you're not really in a position to record it. You missed it, right? You have to hope it's going to show again. With the cloud video recorder, you no longer need to buy an expensive box because no longer is the content, the video content that you record, it's stored in your box at home. It's actually going to be stored in our network. So we're actually going to store what you wanted to store in our network for you. You can then access that content in any room that you choose, whichever room you have a box. You can then look up the content you saved. While out, you can then say, hey, look, this particular show going on, let me save that. And while you're out, and save it, and so save it in our network. And when you get home, you'll be able to access that. So that's a new wave of technology, building on the whole concept around cloud-based technology and everything over IP. That's something that will be coming out shortly. All right, so let's try and wrap up career opportunities. Before I stop my head, any questions on what I just spoke about? Yes.
The cloud services, you
Yes.
intend to make that mobile, or is it already mobile?
Sorry. So we're talking about, for example, Go is actually available on your smartphone, right? So it's sort of like our entry into mobile, right? So if you have a smartphone and you have a proper connection, 4G, third generation or 4th generation mobile connection, you are able to open up your Go app and have it register and you'll be able to access your services. So to answer your question one word, I think the answer is yes.
The problems in latency?
Well, so yes, you will have problems, and that kind of comes back to the provider's network. But as technologies evolve, providers evolve, and when you look at techniques such as, a lot of the providers, the mobile doesn't actually release these zones. When you get into these Wi-Fi zones, they actually offload the traffic from their 4th generation network to the Wi-Fi network. That sort of addresses latency concerns. So it's relying on the network provider. So whichever network you're using to access the cloud service, agreed. If that guy's network is crap, cloud service ain't gonna work good. But the point is that from our perspective, what we're doing is making it available to you. So once you're, traveling, right? You're traveling and you're at your hotel, in your hotel room, and they have good Wi-Fi, you can now register and your Go app comes up. And when people call your home phone number, your Go app is ringing. They don't even know you're traveling. And you can then take the call, make the call, etc. and so on. And when you're calling them, you're not paying roaming charges or expensive hotel fees. You're just making a call like you're making a call from your landline. So those are some of the advantages. But yes, there would be concerns that the network on who the cloud voice service is being used or the cloud service is being used is crap. Yes. I mean, there's nothing you can really control, but the expectation on that is that as technology evolves and broadband technologies evolve, that the general providers, especially if you're assuming you choose a good provider to subscribe to your services, that they're going to have good latency and so on.
If you're like a full member, right, like let's say you already paid for TV,
Yeah.
it's like you have to pay extra for this on like a mobile device, or you could use your account information from what you already have to get this mobile.
So currently, as it stands right now, commercially there's no additional charge. I can't promise that's going to be like that forever because there's always the whole question of return on investment. But yeah, currently it's treated as a value add. But I mean, there is value to it. So if it is that we see that there's customers taking it up and there's a demand, then obviously there may be some sort of like a $20 add-on fee per month or something that will be added to allow you to access this and to access the conveniences of this.
Is this on the App Store or Play Store?
It's actually, yes, it's actually available on the Play Store and in Apple App Store.
Like you can actually get it right now.
Yes. That wasn't my intention, by the way. I was really more keeping in the theme of broadband everywhere and cloud services. Yeah. So yeah, career opportunities. So as you know, and it's interesting that Sean mentioned tier tech, right? So I could even add another sublet to this first one. You have, your utility company looking to enter the telecom space. You also have the Toronto Tobago government actively seeking to attract a third mobile operator into the market. So obviously with new players and new well-funded players, they're going to need people. And the people that they need is not only telecom specific people. So it's not only persons who, know about modulation and could design RF networks and could configure transmission, systems and protocols. I mean so there's need for those guys, which are your core telecom engineers and supervisors and managers. So you have that. But you also have a need for database guys, database development guys, system development guys who would support servers and so on and so forth, computer engineering type stuff, even electrical engineers. I can tell you, I can't disclose which one. One of the mobile operators in this country is electrical infrastructure, piss poor, right? Because they just do pay good attention to proper electrical engineering practices, right? So you have poorly grounded systems. I mean, anything that you could imagine, they have that problem, right? The outages, it's crazy, right? So I would say, with all this deployment of ICT and expansion of networks and broadband all over the place, there still is a need for good fundamental electrical engineering to ensure you have proper, well-designed electrical systems. When problems occur, good proper engineering troubleshooting and resolution and that sort of stuff. So there's that aspect, just from a strict core electrical engineering perspective, as well as instrumentation, remote sensors and management. That is also a critical skill with the expansion of like a TNTech into telecom services, or a mobile operator coming, or even one of the existing mobile operators. They need some proper skills in this area, in those areas as well. So as I said, there are a lot of opportunities from that perspective. The other thing that government is big on, and so this is why we are supporting government's trust, is to get broadband services into the rural communities, the remote parts of Trinidad. So government actually has developed what they call a universal service fund, and they have a levy on various operators and service providers in the market where a percent of revenue has to be thrown into that. And that money collected in a universal service fund is to be targeted to expansion efforts into rural and remote areas. So there's going to be a lot of network development and ICT centers and internet cafes and all that's going to be developed. And in addition to just development and maintenance of those, there's also actually going to be persons from those rural areas who are going to have to man it, right? And like anything in this world, anything that you install and you put in, you have to maintain and maintain well. You can't just set up an ICT cafe and throw 10 computers and expect that in 6 months it wouldn't be infested with viruses and printers destroyed, right? You're going to have proper skilled ICT professionals administering those things and ensuring that the systems are maintained and properly used. With the continued trust and more customers, enterprise customers, government as well, are realizing that they can't spend time and effort around building a proper data center to house their critical servers and so on. And more companies are looking to house their critical servers and data off-site into persons who have experience and expertise in that area. So there's a lot of trust and demand going on right now for data center development in Trinidad. There's currently 2.5 data centers in Trinidad right now. One is Fujitsu ICL, who's primarily held by government and a few of their customers. One is Columbus. We have a few customers in our data center as well. But there's a demand and there's a growing sense of need for data center delivery to a number of government and enterprise customers. So this is something that is definitely going to be a lot of growth and development. And again, with data center development, in addition to the hardcore telecom skills, there's also, as I say, the instrumentation and the power engineering skills are very much needed to support something like this, because it doesn't make sense having a data center and when TNTech goes down, the power goes down for the data center, right? You're going to have your automatic transfer switches, your generators, your well-maintained generators, your battery supplies, and that being properly maintained and all that sort of stuff, so that you ensure your data center runs on a 24/7 basis. Whatever servers are hosted in a data center always run and never go down. And another great opportunity as well is government themselves has committed to adopting ICT, information and communication technology, within their business processes. So it means more data communication links, more telecommunication services, more electronic services, databases, storage, IT systems, all that sort of good stuff. And private sector as well. I mean, private sector has done for a long time, but you see private sector now looking towards the cloud to provide a lot of these services for them. Government looking to outsource a lot of ICT. And where you see a growing demand for ICT services is among the small business sector. So again, the small business sector can no longer afford for that computer that has all their customer records and invoices when it crashes to lose all that information. So they're now looking to have that backed up somewhere. And they're now looking to ensure that those systems are secure and not compromised and hacked. And they also, customers now, all of us now want online login. I want to log in and see my statements and get e-statements and emails and all that sort of good stuff. All great, all sexy, but it has to be securely delivered. Alright, you can't have your customers' information compromised and passwords compromised. So all these are there's a greater demand for these type of electronic and ICT services, and to support that you need well-trained, properly seasoned, proper expert persons to ensure that those things can be developed and delivered securely to the wider mass, the wider public and the small businesses that want to adopt these technologies. And lastly, I mean, Dr. Rock, I should say, and I were talking before the meeting, before the presentation, about the fact that there needs to be a lot more innovation within the country, within the region, and we need to stop just outsourcing, just blindly outsourcing things to folks in Canada and Holland and all these sort of places. And I was talking just recently, I was talking earlier in the presentation about the regulatory push for number portability, right? And I was talking about like a need for a middleman who's going to sort of act between the various operators to support number portability ports. So right now, me actually actively involved in that whole process about setting up that infrastructure. Unfortunately, I look at the system spec and I think, man, this is not something that really we need to outsource or get some external person to come and do. But the reality is we don't really have the experience in the region. But the reality is once it's actually here or once we're exposed, it's very easy for us to do and support. And we can actually keep that money to develop, deliver, support, maintain that central number portability system within the region. And the reality is while Trinidad and probably Jamaica could afford to bring in somebody to do this, a lot of the other Caribbean countries like Dominica and St. Kitts and Nevis, they can't afford to pay for no third party to come and do it. So there's a massive opportunity, because of the mandate for time that government wants number portability available next year, you wouldn't have the opportunity now to sit down and develop that from scratch locally. But once that is actually up and running, there's actually a great opportunity for us regionally here to look at this, see what is maintained, what is supported, how it works, build our own. When what's currently being proposed right now is that the first middleman or clearinghouse, as they call it, will come in for a period of 5 years. After that 5 years, till the guy pack up and go, we just run it ourselves, right? And then once we have it running ourselves, we could offer this service to the other Caribbean countries and not have that money being, unfortunately, lost there to the other developing markets. And it's easy. It's like simple database technology. It's stuff we always do for a little final year project or I wouldn't say a final year project, a semester project. The kind of code you all do for a software engineering project. It's just about discipline, documentation, requirement analysis, testing, all that sort of good stuff we're doing software engineering. So, there's an opportunity that we could look at. Electronic identity management is something that, as a country, we kind of have to move up a notch. We still manual and paper-based in too many various systems. Links has been out for too long that we're unable to do like electronic purchase via links online. So all these are opportunities that of things that are needed within the sector, yawning gaps of opportunities for there to be electronic and telecommunication based systems that could assist in closing these gaps. I'll just probably speak very quickly on that penultimate bullet there. So what is that? Peer-to-peer copyright infringement. We all know about downloading movies. Does anyone not download? Start. Just joking.
File sharing.
File sharing, exactly. Right? So obviously, you know, what happens is every time a great movie comes out, you know, about 100 people across the world get a copy of it, they rip it, they put it on a computer, and they make it available via very popular file sharing applications, right? Now, the owners of these movies, the producers of these movies, they're not stupid, they know it happening. So what they do is they actually create their own copies of these ripped illegal movies, right? And put it out there to be picked up by the file sharing app. So they just act like a normal file sharing user, and they plant effectively a copy for file sharing users to pick up. And once it's picked up, they have all the data of the IP address of the person who's picked up the file sharing copy. And then they send these notices to the providers, the internet service providers, who are us. And we get the users, we say, this person, this IP address, on this date and time, download this particular movie. Please take action against the person, and so on and so forth. Now, for now, we are still small in the bigger scheme of things. So obviously these companies like Universal and all these guys, they focus on where they could get the biggest bang for their buck. So they're going after the biggest countries, the biggest infringers. But there will be a time when they're gonna come to us and say, hey, Columbus, how many people you suspend? You know, have you blocked this guy? How come I keep seeing the same IP address, keep pulling the same, you know, still like illegal movies, right? So there is going to be a need, you know, for some work, and as I said, it's a very it's pretty cool because you basically have to pull and interact with a lot of different systems from the various internet service providers, whether it's, you know, to determine which internet user had this particular IP address at this particular date and time kind of thing, and be able to provide that in a managed, easy to run platform. So that when the notices come, have an automated system which picks up, determines, right, because this customer, he used the guy, you know, from the IP address, determine the customer address, and almost like prepare a letter that the provider could just push you and send, you know. So there's actually, as I say, a lot of opportunities for local, you know, system development, application development, business development, for us to use, you know, the things that you're going to learn and skills that you're going to have to fill gaps, needed gaps that have to be addressed within the region, in the ICT space. With that, any last questions?
Just here in counter shines that what we call in 4G